Hi, my name is Madison.
And my name is Sarah.
And today we will be discussing the media amnesia present within Belgium regarding their colonial history.
When the Belgians arrived in the Congo, they found a population that was victim of bloody rivalries and slave trade. Belgian civil servants, missionaries, doctors, colonists, and engineers civilized the black population step by step. They created modern cities, roads and railroads, harbors and airports, factories and mines, schools and hospitals. This work greatly improved the living condition of the indigenous people. This is a quote from a 2006 Belgian school textbook on colonial history. However, Belgium's history in the Congo is much darker than how it's presented here.
King Leopold II of Belgium became interested in the Congo starting in the late 1870s, but it wasn't until the Berlin Conference in 1885 that the Free Congo state became the property of Leopold and subsequently a colony of Belgium.
Leopold's claim on the Congo had been legitimized by the 400 treaties that the explorer Stanley generously negotiated on Leopold's behalf.
Stanley's expeditions into the Congo allowed for Belgium to establish various stations along the Congo River. These stations took advantage of the local Congolese populations and used them as either military forces or slave labor.
To enforce his rule, the sovereign king had created an army. In time, it would be 16,000 strong, equipped with modern Belgian-made automatic rifles. The novelist Joseph Conrad was in the Congo Free State from the start. As a result of what he saw there, he wrote Heart of Darkness.
They grabbed what they could get for the sake of what was to be got. It was just robbery with violence, aggravated murder on a great scale, as is very proper for those who tackle a darkness.
Additionally, Leopold supported movements to take Congolese children to Belgium and train them in Western ways, before sending them back to the Congo to civilize other Congolese. Many children were also kidnapped and transported to child colonies, where they would train to be soldiers, 50% of which would not make it out of the colony. Leopold's palace in Belgium at Tervuren also featured a human zoo of 267 Congolese people.
The tragedy isn't only apparent in Leopold's objectives, but also in the public's reaction to these things. When discussing Leopold's mission to westernize Congolese children, a Sierra Leone article reads, "The necessity presses upon the conscience of the Christian world to do something in that way for Africa," referring to enlightening a perceived lesser people in the way of the cultured.
How did the gross human rights violations at the hands of Belgium go unnoticed and unpunished for so long? Not only did Leopold manage to gain control of an area over 70 times the size of his own country, but because he caused decades upon decades of irreversible damage to the Congolese people. Leopold found success with the use of propaganda, one of his most relied upon tactics for controlling outside perspectives on the Congo.
While he was not always adored during his life, he famously misled the media, broadcasting himself as a humanitarian with wishes to civilize and bring growth to the Congo. Leopold skewed public opinion of himself, presenting himself as a trailblazer and philanthropist, one who created beautiful botanical gardens in Coquilloville, not one who caused countless atrocities in developing nations. This is what Leopold entertained the public with, anecdotes of positive PR stunts to keep attention away from the real situation.
And as a way to cement this humanitarian, benevolent status, Leopold also made use of obfuscation, using confusing language and misleading timelines to obscure the truth of his intentions in the Congo. He would create positive, progressive-sounding statements and hedge around direct accusations, never giving a solid timeline of events. In his speeches, Leopold desired nothing but humanity and progress for the Congo, contrary to the so-called baseless reports coming from those traveling there.
His methods were certainly successful. Even after his death, a 1915 newspaper article mentions the courage of Leopold and how he defied the public opinion of all Europe in Congo affairs, trailblazing a new frontier. Leopold's posthumous glorification isn't coincidental. It was largely due to the cult that developed immediately after his death to reinvigorate support for the colonization of the Congo.
This Leopoldian cult was a collection of high-class Belgians who spread propaganda about the Congo and Leopold himself. The brighter the light shone upon Leopold, the brighter the shine on the Congo. A member of this cult went as far to say in 1920 that the Congo Free State is a fairy tale realized by Leopold, a colonizer with a touch of genius.
The scholar Amy Césaire explains how this propaganda impacted colonized and formerly colonized peoples. It forced the discourse surrounding colonization to focus on its positives rather than negatives. Hence, ideas such as the progress and achievements of colonization, rather than its human rights abuses and exploitation, were commonly discussed.
Despite these negative implications, the propaganda established under Leopold has continued into the present. The news in Belgium still works to exhibit a positive portrayal of the royal family and of colonization. We have found that when we look into current news in Belgium surrounding this topic, an emphasis on the good over the bad is made.
A Brussels Times article displays 11 consecutive paragraphs applauding Belgian King Felipe for sending his deepest regards to the Congolese president. This statement is the first time that the Belgian royal family has denounced the colonization of the Congo. However, the king stopped short of providing an outright apology. Criticisms of his statements are only shown within the final 2 paragraphs of the article. Their placement at the bottom of the page indicates to the reader that these critiques are less important than the praise shown prior.
Additionally, the article only quotes one person who is not a white European, Pierre Company. Because of this, Company, a black Congolese, becomes the representative for every non-white, non-European voice. Thus, his praise of the Belgian king insinuates that all who share his positionality approve of the statements that the king made.
The media's preference towards the Belgian king and their lack of non-white, non-European representation illustrates how the propaganda established under Leopold has continued. There's a clear focus on the good deeds of the Belgian royalty rather than on the atrocities that this family committed throughout colonization and into the present. This inability to reject the propaganda developed during the colonial era has implications for how Belgians remember their colonial history.
In Antwerp, for instance, a giant severed hand sculpture in their chocolate hand specialty continued to exist, despite sharing obvious similarities to the mass severing of hands that took place during Belgium's colonization of the Congo.
Antwerp was where the Congo rubber arrived. According to legend, the city's name comes from a confrontation between a Roman soldier and a giant who also cut off hands. Any connection between the city's symbol and cut hands in the Congo is seldom made in Antwerp. It's as though the crimes of the Congo are totally forgotten, or worse, never happened.
Along with the statements from the documentary by Bates, Belgium's inability to come to terms with their colonial past and recognize the injustices they committed within the Congo contributes to the continued mistreatment of Black people within Belgium today.
The enduring presence of the blackface figure, Black Pete, the endemic racism found within the Antwerp Police Corps, and the depictions of former U.S. President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle as chimpanzees in a national newspaper is evidence of this racism.
These racist acts are met with little to no resistance. Belgians repeatedly dismiss anti-Black racism, no doubt because they have not yet established a proper dialogue regarding their colonial past within Africa.
Until Belgium can recognize that their media continues to promote the colonial mindset established under Leopold, they will never be able to acknowledge and atone for the atrocities they committed within the Congo during colonization, and for the racism present in the country today.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you're interested in learning more about this topic, visit africasaCountry.com.
We hope you enjoyed our podcast. Happy holidays and see you next semester.